Why does an empire, at the peak of its power, begin to destroy its own currency? Sounds absurd, doesn't it? You'd imagine that rulers, surrounded by the best advisors, the brightest strategists, would do everything to preserve their nation's wealth. But there's a pattern so precise, so mathematical, that it's been repeating for over 2,000 years. And it always ends the same way, with fire, with chaos, with people in the streets holding money that's worth nothing. This isn't just an episode about history, it's about you, about what's happening right now, because the pattern, it never stopped. Let's go back to the year 216 after Christ. Rome is at its peak. Legions dominate from Britannia to Egypt. The Colosseum still draws crowds. Paved roads connect an empire that seems eternal. But something began to rot from within, something that few noticed until it was too late. The Roman denarius, the most powerful currency in the ancient world. For centuries, it was made of pure silver. 95% silver. When you held a denarius, you held real value, tangible. But then the emperors began to have a problem. Wars were expensive, very expensive. And the Roman people demanded bread in circuses, free entertainment, subsidized food. How to pay for all of this? The answer was simple, diabolical, but simple. They started reducing the amount of silver in the coins. Just a little at first. Nobody would notice, right? From 95% to 90, then to 85, then 70, 60. By the 3rd century, the denarius had only 5% silver. 5. The rest was cheap bronze covered with a thin silver layer. But here's the dark trick. The government kept saying the denarius was worth the same, kept demanding that citizens accept the deteriorated coin at the same price. It was institutionalized lying, silent theft. And the people began to lose faith. When trust in a currency dies, something terrible happens. Prices begin to rise. Not a little, exponentially. A sack of wheat that cost 2 denarii now costs 10, then 50, then 500. Soldiers paid in worthless coins began to desert. Borders became unprotected. Barbarians invaded, and the empire that seemed eternal began to burn. But here's the part that should make you stop and think. The emperors knew. They knew they were destroying the currency. Knew it would lead to collapse. So why did they do it? Because the alternative was worse. It was admitting the empire was bankrupt. It was cutting benefits. It was facing revolts. It was losing power immediately. So they chose slow agony, gradual death. They bought time by printing fake coins. And you think this was unique? That Rome was the only one to make this mistake? Let's jump forward 1,500 years. Germany, 1923. World War I is over. Germany lost. And now it must pay. War reparations were astronomical. 132 billion gold marks, an impossible amount. But the Treaty of Versailles accepted no excuses. Pay or be invaded again. The Weimar government faced the same choice as Rome, confess bankruptcy, or print. They chose to print. Day and night the presses ran. Tons of paper money flooded the streets. At first, it seemed to work. Debts were paid. Wages were distributed. But illusion doesn't last forever. In January of 1923, one American dollar was worth 7,000 marks. In November of the same year, $1 was worth 4,200 billion marks. 4.2 trillion. People went to the market with wheelbarrows full of money and came back without food, because prices changed every hour. A loaf of bread cost millions. An egg cost billions. Families burned money to keep warm, because the paper was worth more as fuel than as currency. Children played with stacks of bills as if they were toys. And meanwhile, something dark grew in the shadows. Resentment, anger, despair. Fertile ground for extremism. For easy promises? For men who blamed imaginary enemies for the ruin? We know how that story ended, with death camps. With 50 million dead, with a continent in ashes. And it all started with the decision to print fake money. But wait, you might be thinking, that was the past. We were primitive. We didn't have economists. We didn't have computers. We didn't have today's sophisticated systems. Now we're smarter, right? So let's talk about something more recent. Something that happened when you were already alive. Zimbabwe. Year 2000. Robert Mugabe, the dictator, decided he would redistribute land. Commercial farms were confiscated. Owners expelled. And they were handed over to people with no experience in industrial agriculture. Food production plummeted. From a food exporter, Zimbabwe became a starving country. But Mugabe had a solution. The same solution as always. He ordered the central bank to print money. Money to buy food. Money to pay the army. Money to maintain power. The presses began to work. And the pattern ... repeated. In 2008, inflation in Zimbabwe reached ... wait for it, 231 million% per year. No, you didn't read that wrong. 231 million. The government printed a 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar note. 100 trillion, and with it, you couldn't even buy bread. People stopped using the national currency. Started trading with American dollars, with South African rands, with anything that had real value. The Zimbabwean dollar became literal toilet paper, and the country plunged into a humanitarian crisis that lasts to this day. 3 empires, 3 different eras, 3 levels of technology, but the same mistake, the same suicidal decision. Print until collapse. Now ... you must be wondering, why does this matter to me? Why should I care about Rome, about Weimar, about Zimbabwe? Because the pattern hasn't stopped. It's happening now. Right in front of you, and most people can't see it. If this is getting to you, imagine what comes next. If you want to understand the signs before it's too late ... subscribe now, because what we're about to reveal goes far beyond what most dare to admit. Since 2008, after the financial crisis, something changed. Central banks around the world began an unprecedented experiment. They called it quantitative easing, a technical term, harmless, but you know what it really means? Money printing on an industrial scale. The Federal Reserve of the United States created, out of nothing, more than $8 trillion. The European Central Bank created trillions of euros. The Bank of Japan, trillions of yen. Money that didn't exist on Monday ... existed on Tuesday. With a click, with a digital entry. No backing, no gold. Nothing tangible behind it. And where did all that money go? To save banks. To buy debt securities. To inflate the stock market. To create the illusion of recovery. The rich got richer. Stocks rose. Real estate prices exploded. But the average worker saw their purchasing power melt. An apartment that cost $200,000 in 2010 now costs $500,000. A used car that cost $10,000 now costs $25,000. Food, energy, education, healthcare, everything rising, faster than wages. Much faster. And when people complained, what did government say? That inflation was temporary, that it was caused by the pandemic, by the war in Ukraine, by anything, except the reckless printing of money. But you feel it, don't you? That something is wrong, that working 40 hours a week is no longer enough, that saving is pointless, that the game is rigged against you. Because it is, and it always has been. Here's the dark truth nobody wants to tell you. Money printing isn't a mistake. It's a tool to transfer wealth, from ordinary people to those closest to the printer. When the Fed creates $1 trillion, who receives that money first? The banks, large corporations, investment funds. They use this new money to buy assets, stocks, real estate, commodities, and prices rise. By the time that money finally reaches you, prices have already gone up. You're paying more for everything ... while those who received the money first got rich. It's a game of musical chairs, and you're always the last to sit. But what would you do if you discovered the system was designed exactly for this? That it's not a bug, it's the main feature? In 1913, before the creation of the Federal Reserve, a dollar had a specific purchasing power. Today, over 100 years later, that same dollar is worth about 3 cents. 97% of the value ... evaporated, silently stolen, year after year, while you worked, while you saved, while you trusted. And the scariest part? Nobody was arrested. No banker was convicted, because it's not illegal. It's the system working exactly as designed. Would you trust your future to a system built to keep you blind? Now let's connect the final dots. The United States national debt is over $35 trillion. 35 trillion. A number so large the human brain can't process it. To pay just the interest on this debt, the government spends more than $1 trillion per year. 1 trillion. And it's growing. How do you pay an unpayable debt? You don't pay it. You print more money. You dilute the currency. You do exactly what Rome did, what Weimar did, what Zimbabwe did. And every year, the debt increases. Interest increases. The need to print ... increases. It's a spiral, a downward spiral. And in the end, it always ends the same way, but is there still time? Is it still possible to escape? The honest answer is maybe, but not for most. Because most don't see the pattern. Most believe that this time is different. That modern economists have discovered a way to print money without consequences. That technology will save us. That governments won't let everything collapse. But history doesn't lie. And the pattern is clear. When an empire begins to destroy its own currency, the clock starts ticking. It might take decades. It might take years, but the end ... is inevitable. So what do you do with this information? Do you panic? Do you sell everything and buy gold? Do you move to a mountain and live off subsistence? No, you wake up. You stop believing in comfortable narratives. You understand the system wasn't made to protect you. It was made to extract from you. And when you see this, when you truly see, you can no longer pretend you don't know. The money in your pocket is being corroded, silently, invisible to the eye, but mathematically precise. And while this happens, those who understand the game are positioning themselves. They're converting paper into real assets. They're buying land, precious metals, skills that can't be inflated. They know what's coming. And you? Are you ready for what's coming? Because the signs are all there? Money printing hasn't stopped. Debt hasn't stopped growing. Inflation hasn't been came ... It's just been temporarily hidden. And when the next crisis comes ... and it will come, the answer will be the same. Print more. Dilute more. Steal more. Until one day, someone wakes up holding a $100 trillion bill and realizes they can't buy bread. Empires don't fall in a day. They rot slowly from the inside out. And it always starts the same way, with rulers who think they can cheat the laws of economics, that they can create something from nothing, that they can make money lose value without losing power. But economic gravity is relentless, and the ground always arrives. The question isn't if it will happen. The question is when, and more importantly, will you be on the right side when it does? Because in the end, only two groups survive collapse. Those who saw it coming, and those who control the printers. Everyone else ... burns along with the paper. If this opened your eyes, if you can finally see the pattern that's repeating, imagine what we'll reveal in the next episode. Because the story of money printing is just the surface. There's something deeper, darker, and closer to you than you imagine. Subscribe now. Because ignorance ... won't be an excuse when everything crumbles.